I'm super pumped to be here tonight.
I know. Gare's back, everybody, in case you
hmm
couldn't tell from his voice.
For my voice. Here I
Yeah.
am. Um, I'm super pumped to be here. And yeah, I have been listening as much as possible. Am I okay?
Yeah, my tissue box just all of a sudden fell, and I was like, what
Oh,
just moved?
I was like, can you not hear me? Um, I've been listening and I appreciate everybody asking how I am
hmm
and all the kind words. So I might as well just jump in and say, for once, I'm not over dramatic. I just finally got diagnosed with POTS.
You
So
did.
uh, all of the illness and fatigue and not feeling well and the brain fog and all of that good stuff is not just me being a drama queen. I actually have POTS. So
You're like, for all the haters who didn't believe me.
for anyone who was like, oh my God, he just wants to take a break from the podcast, I don't. I didn't.
I haven't had anyone ask me that, so there's that.
Well, I'm sure
Everyone's just been worried about you.
you know how some haters are though. They wouldn't say it
Oh yeah,
to you. They're probably just like listening, like, oh, he probably just
I
there's
do
probably
know.
nobody. But in my mind, I'm just like,
It's okay. You're just addressing the possibility of haters.
yeah, I'm just like, listen, I didn't just step away for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And I'll just pop in when I feel good and when you want me as a buddy.
Yes, it makes it seem like some of the time I'm like, eh.
Honestly, I would not blame you because I cause nothing but technical issues every time I try to do the podcast. I don't know that I'm supposed to accept calendar things. I just leave them in my inbox and I'm like, oh, cool. I'll just leave this in here as a reminder. I schedule things with you and then something weird happens with my schedule that's like last minute. And
Yeah.
like I literally in person where I live have like 3 or 4 friends that I hang out with.
hmm
So like I would not expect there to be a lot of things that would pop up until
hmm
like I've had no plans the past month. And then like we make this plan and it's like XYZ.
Social care.
Yeah, well, so like on the road, me and my pots
Yeah.
when it's like 85 degrees and I feel like I'm gonna pass out everywhere.
Sounds totally safe.
Yeah, just loving it.
Yeah, I am not loving the weather, as everyone who
No,
has listened would know. This is my hell.
yes, this is my hell as well. I don't like the heat
hmm
and I don't like the humidity. And it
Humidity
has
is
been
out of control.
disgustingly hot and humid here.
hmm
And then to top it all off, it has today's day 2 of it just pouring down rain, which has cooled it
Yeah.
off, but increased the humidity so much that I'm
Yes.
like, I want to die.
It was the same thing. I almost got like a little bit excited this morning for the walk because it said it was 68 outside. And then I
hmm
walked outside, it was 94% humidity. Like it felt like it was 80. I was like, this is not 68.
Yeah,
It's, ugh, I hate it so much. But while it sucked to have to pay for it, we did upgrade our HVAC last summer. So this
hmm
is like the kind of the last 2 summers we were like, hope it keeps working. And so this is the first summer I haven't had to worry about it. So now I'm kind of like,
yes.
okay, it was worth it. And it is hella cool.
I
So,
um my AC units are the wall units
oh yeah.
that go into your wall, and I turn my air conditioner on when I go to bed at night, but I have it set at 65 because I like it colder when I sleep.
hmm
And I like wake up in the middle of the night or wake up the next morning and it's like it drops to 60. So it like
Wow.
cools my bedroom down to like 65, but then it
Oh,
like continues to drop and I'm like, "Oh, I love this. Like it feels so good."
I do
But I'm
too.
noticing like how sore my throat is because
Oh, it's so
it's like
dry.
it's like an ice box in here.
Yes. Yeah, I'm
But
to the stage where I'm having to use eye drops a lot. Like when I wake up, they're really dry even. But I'm like, give me that AC.
oh yeah, I know. I'll crank that
Give it
fucker.
all.
I just want to be cold as fuck all the time.
I know. Yeah.
Ugh, it's so
Well,
hazy.
I actually thought of an icebreaker. It came to me when I was drying my hair, and then I was like, should I stop and write it? And I was like, no, I'll remember it. Didn't remember it. And then I was like, hopefully it comes back to me. And it did come back to me, thankfully. I'm really glad because I think it's I mean, it's probably like not the funnest subject, but it just seems like a fun subject to me and it's cracking me up that I'm like, this is so fun.
You like
Um,
ask me and I hang up.
you're like, okay.
Like, what's my favorite Skittle?
Grape or orange, of course.
Orange. Whatever.
Um, yeah, orange is great. But
Mhm,
so we've been seeing a lot more movies. Like we're just on a movie kick. And obviously I'm always on a book kick, but
mhm,
it was like making it because like when Tyler and I talk about movies afterwards, he is used to an out of 10 system because movies are like out of 10 stars, like on
mhm,
like IMDb and everywhere else. Like even Rotten Tomatoes is like percent. So it's kind of that 10 thing again.
mhm,
And then books are almost always out of 5 stars.
mhm.
And it was bringing me to this like weird conclusion that like I actually give a lot of 5 stars, which is something I noticed when preparing for this topic, but I've never given a movie 10 stars. And so then it was also making me think about how like a 3.5 for a book makes me like, oh, like if I see someone gave it something like that, a 3 or 3.5. But if a
Uh-huh.
movie is a 7, that's like a solid movie still to me, where I'm like, oh, okay.
Mhm.
So where I'm headed with this is like, do you feel the discrepancy where like 5 out of 5 feels different than 10 out of 10 in the like rating systems?
Um,
Hangs up.
Now, quick. Um, I will say if I'm very excited for a book and like it's
Mhm.
Goodreads is like a
Mhm.
3, 3.5, I'm like 5.
Right. Hmm.
But if I'm really excited for a movie and it's like a 5 up, I don't give a shit because all I'm doing is sitting my ass on a couch with like a snack of my choice and pressing play. So
Yeah.
like if if I waste 2 hours on a movie and be like, oh, I did not like that, it's not as infuriating as carving time out of my schedule to
Mm.
read a book. So I feel like I'm a little bit more lenient with like movies.
Yeah. And
But
I was
to
kind of
be
saying the same thing where actually because I was saying like a 3.5 book, I'm like, but a 7 movie, I'm like, cool, sounds great.
Yes. And I think that's why if it were me and like one thing I could do if I could change, like go back and change time, this is not the
Yeah.
one thing, but like this is one of the things
One
I would
of
do.
them.
If I wasted my time on this, my personal life would be in shambles.
Yeah.
If I could go back in time and change a few things, one of the things I would do is I think that books should be 1 out of 10 and movies should be
Yeah.
1 out of 5. Because
Yeah.
for me, like a 6 out of 10 book is like good,
Hmm.
enjoyed it, didn't feel like I wasted my time. But like a
Hmm.
4 out of 10 book is like maybe I wish I would have picked something out,
Hmm.
instead of this.
Hmm.
But like when you do that on the 1 to 5 scale, it's like, oh, like to me, if somebody gives anything 3 and above, I'm like, oh, so they enjoyed it. And then two
Yeah.
is like, wasn't my cup of tea, and one was like, I hated it. And then like
Yes.
0 is like, this is just awful. So, but like there is a big difference in a book when you're
There
doing that.
is.
Like
Yeah.
sometimes I read a book and I'm like, okay, that wasn't as good as I wanted, or there was something missing, or it just didn't vibe with me, but it was still like enjoyable. And
Hmm.
then like a 4 for me is like, that was so good. I do not
Hmm.
regret anything about reading it. And then like
Yeah.
a
Hmm.
5 is like, I want this book to be in my casket.
Yes. Casket level. I don't, they're just gonna have to bury me with my phone.
They're gonna have to bury me with like basically bright young women.
You're like, that's the only 5-star ever.
I am so bad with 5 stars lately. I am the complete,
Yeah,
like, you're like joking around. You're like, I've been handing out 5 stars, and I'm like,
I just have. You know what some of it is some of it for me is like if it's a 4.5 maybe,
mhm,
um if that's maybe what I would give it, like, oh, okay, it's not like wildly the best book I've ever read, but was like really fucking good. But then if I go on Goodreads and it doesn't have many reviews, or like some people are being like harsh about dumb stuff, I'm like, I'm giving it 5. Because I'm also like, it was that close to being a 5 for me anyway. And so now I think I
yeah,
give more 5s.
yeah. Usually, like, I think now I'm just like pickier where like I want, if a book is a 5 star for me, I want it to be something that has changed me or completely
Hmm.
dragged me out of a reading rut, or just like something that like is going to stick with me
Yeah.
forever. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
going to be a 4 for me. Like if it's going to be
Yeah.
something that I read and a month from now somebody's like, "Oh, what did you think of this part?" And I'm like, "I don't remember that part." It's 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I'm
Yep.
like reciting it line for line when somebody asks me that question, like it's a 5. It's a 5.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine is sometimes I lose character names pretty quickly. Like if I'm reading, especially if I'm reading at least 2 books a week, I'll forget character names.
Yeah.
But if I like it, I agree. It would be like I could still be like, oh yeah, the main character's sister. I just wouldn't have the name.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand
Mhm.
that. Yeah. I'm the
But you're
same
good with
way.
names. You remember names.
I remember unique names, and I'll tell you
That's true.
what, if I could pick somebody out to name all of my babies that I'm not having,
Mhm.
it would be Sarah Shepard, who wrote the Pretty Little Liars series,
Hmm.
because all of her books have like the coolest character names.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like I
that's
love
cool.
her like she like introduced me to the name Sutton,
Oh yeah. I will
which I
always think
loved
of
before.
Sunstruck now.
Yeah, I know. I was like, now all I think is like Sutton Strack. But like
Name
before I
'em.
was like, oh my God, I love that name. And like the name like Aria
Oh, I love that
from Pretty
name.
Little Liars. Yeah, she's just like she picks like really cool names that are like unique but not like trying too hard.
Mm. See, there's a unique shout out for her.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And obviously Pretty Little Liars was like my 20s. Like, oh my God, it's so good.
I know. I'm trying to think. I watched Gossip Girl in my 20s. It's not exactly the same thing. Anyway,
They both got ridiculous as the shows went
they
on.
did both get more ridiculous as they went on. I remember like watching it because it like binging TV was basically like new when I was in college.
Hmm.
Dude, I was had a dream I was in college last night. Um, and Gossip Girl was like one that had like tons of seasons, and I was like, "Ooh, I don't live at home. I can watch this." And now I'm like, Gossip Girl is what I felt that way about.
It's so funny because like I how how much older am I than you?
I'm 31.
Okay, so I'm 6 years older than you.
Yeah.
So when you were in diapers, um, but like when I was in college, the popular thing
Uh-huh.
was the DVD box sets.
Yes, because that was high school for me. Someone gave me the DVD box set of One Tree Hill.
Yes. So that was how like I would binge my time. And I just remember like it was a sickness. So, like right now my sickness is like buying books, obviously, and that's probably what it's gonna be. But
Right.
like that was my sickness. Like I remember the first one I bought was the first season of the OC,
Oh yeah.
and I was hooked. I was like, this is a drug. And then I did
Yes.
One Tree Hill, and I think I did like Desperate Housewives,
Mm-hmm.
Dexter.
Dexter was like college for me too.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like addicted. Like that was what my paychecks were going toward. I was like, I don't need to eat. I
Yeah.
don't need to like pay for gas. I just need a pack of Marb Lights and like the next season of Dexter.
Yes. That was the first gift I got Tyler, was because it wasn't on, we didn't have HBO at least, or it was it Showtime? Sorry, we didn't have
Mhm.
Showtime. Um, and So the first gift I got him was like the Blu-rays of all the seasons that had aired at that point. And I got him because we saw them. It's we still have it somewhere. It's coasters that are like slides, like his
The
what
murder
am I thinking
slides.
of? Yes, the what does he call the thing that he keeps them in? Doesn't he have a name for it? I don't know. But the blood slides, yes. It's
Yeah,
like coasters that are glass but have like blood slides on them, and then it's in like a box that looks like the box that he has. So that was the first gift I got him.
I love that show. I'm actually
Yeah.
going to be restarting that show probably end of summer, beginning of fall, because I don't want to have
Yeah.
bad memories of watching it when it's like too hot. But they're making a prequel series to it, and Sarah Michelle Gellar
Yes.
is going to be in it.
I know. I am so excited.
And she like started filming.
Because that final season they did where they when they came back was
Hmm.
good. So I like
So
believe in their
good.
ability to make another good one.
I was like hoping they were going to continue that
Yeah,
because the
I know.
ending to me kind of felt like you could give me a little more.
Yeah. And it felt like they could almost go back to it if they wanted to, or be like, oh no, it was an ending.
Yeah, yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Who
But we
knows?
love Dexter.
Yes. And we
We
love
love
books.
books.
So we needed, I
Mhm.
felt like we needed to do a mid-year favorites recap. Do people
Yeah.
call it something else? Mid-year? I don't know.
The only thing I see on Instagram, oh, excuse me. The only thing I see on Instagram is people doing like Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 favorites.
Oh
But
yeah.
like, I've been such a picky bitch this year that like it was hard
You
for me
were
to find
struggling
five.
with it. Yeah, you were
Yeah, I
struggling
was
with
like,
half a year.
I'm like reading things and I'm like, this is good. I enjoy this. Or like, this is really good. Or like, it's really fast paced or whatever. But like,
Hmm.
I'm not having anything that's not. Jessica Knoll ruined reading for me. Like, I'm not having anything that's
Oh,
like knocking me off my feet like Bright Young Women
yeah.
did.
Yeah. I
I feel
get
like
that.
I'm an addict. Like, you know how they say that like people who do drugs are always trying to chase that first high they got?
It's your euphoric recall. You're
I'm
like, I
just
want
trying to
it as
like
good as that time.
I'm just trying to find the reading experience that I get with Jessica Knoll,
Oh,
specifically Bright Young Women.
yeah. Sadness and some mystery. Not really. There's not really mystery because we all knew. I don't know. It's such a unique book. That's also probably why it's hard
So
to
unique.
find one.
Yeah, yeah. There is one on my list that I will say
Ooh.
I think is comparable for a specific reason.
Ooh. Nice.
Do you want to
Well,
go
do you want to start?
first? Oh, it's your
That's funny.
podcast.
It is my podcast. Well, I'll go
I'm just a
first.
guest in your home. Yeah, you go first.
Um, well, this was the first one that I was obsessed with in the year, I think. I can't remember. It was definitely like early on in the year, but I loved Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. Like
So good.
flew through that one. Everything about it I loved. But it has been a little, I'll probably just read this one since it's been a while since I've read it and I don't want to give spoilers.
Mhm.
After Lucy is found wandering the streets, covered in her best friend Savvy's blood, everyone thinks she's a murderer. Lucy and Savvy were the golden girls of their small Texas town, pretty, smart, and enviable. Lucy married a dream guy with a big ring and an even bigger new home. Savvy was the social butterfly loved by all, and if you believe the rumors, especially popular with the men in town. It's been years since that horrible night, a night Lucy can't remember anything about, and she has since moved to LA and started a new life. But now the phenomenally huge hit true crime podcast, Listen for the Lie, and its two good looking hosts, Ben Owens, have decided to investigate Savvy's murder for the show's second season. Lucy is forced to return to the place she vowed never to set foot in again to solve her friend's murder, even if she is the one that did it. This one has so many, it has podcasts, which of course I'm always gonna like in a story,
I love that
but
too.
it had so snarky, my favorite type of narrator, like goes back to a small town and is just like making fun of the people in her head. And I also felt like the dynamic between her and the podcast host reminded me of The Last Housewife. So there's also that. It's not as dark
Yeah.
as The Last Housewife, but it's like they have a similar dynamic and there's like a very similar scene too.
I'm like trying not to spoil anything, but yeah.
Uh-huh.
I had a crush on Ben,
Oh my
100%.
gosh, me too.
I had a huge crush on Ben. And Lucy was like, oh my God.
She's so fun.
She's so fun. I love Lucy.
Yeah.
Um, that was a really good one too. Yes, I agree.
Hmm.
I had to print mine out because technical difficulties. I thought we were going to be doing this on my phone, so I was like, so here's Grandpa Gare. It's fucking
I wondered when you were waving papers earlier.
print out because I'm like, okay, I can't read it on my phone if I'm on my phone. So, but whatever. And even like the font is
My font's huge when I read,
font's
so
like
I
huge. Um, so one of the first books that I was like, oh my God, this is the automatic 5 star for me, and I like
Mhm.
love, 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 and would make zero changes, is Kill for Me, Kill for You by Steve Kavanaugh.
Yes,
I loved that. Was this one of yours?
kind of, but I ended up moving it, so I'm glad you took it.
Um, but it is so good. It's so twisty. It's binge worthy. Like this is a weekend book, guys. Like you
It's
start
so
this on
good.
like a Friday night when you get done work so that you do not have a bedtime, you do not have plans, you just can just read it all weekend and get takeout.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Um, one dark evening in New York City's Upper West Side, two strangers meet by chance. Over drinks, Amanda and Wendy realize they have much in common, especially loneliness and an intense desire for revenge against the men who destroyed their families. As they talk into the night, they come up with the perfect, if you kill for me, I'll kill for you. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Ruth is home alone when the beautiful brownstone she shares with her husband, Scott, is invaded. She's attacked by a man with piercing blue eyes who disappears into the night. Will she ever be able to feel safe again while the blue-eyed stranger is out there?
Yeah, my take on
Amazing.
this one has always been that it is the most unique take on strangers on a train since like A Kind Worth Killing.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah,
It
it is
is
amazing how the story
riveting.
comes together. You
It
aren't
is.
gonna you're not gonna think it.
No, no. This is how I felt reading the David Ellis book.
Look closer. I agree.
Yes.
There
Yes.
were
I
so
was
many
just
things going on.
so much was going on, and I thought I had things pieced together, or I had like a broad understanding of where it was going to go. And like Steve Kavanaugh
Yeah.
was like, the fuck you do, and like threw me in a completely different direction. It was so good.
Yes.
So good. Probably one of the
It's pretty
top.
violent too.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, to be honest, guys, if I'm reading, if I'm recommending a book, it's either very violent, very bleak, or there's a ton of sex between two men in
There we go.
it. So there's your trigger warnings.
Yeah. Yeah, it would because like some of the scenes are so like stuck in my mind because of how like visceral they were and painful, actually.
There's Ruth's attack scene that I won't
Yeah.
spoil.
Yeah.
Um, there was one part where like she's in a certain part of the house and she says like you can see like the blue light from the moon coming
Hmm.
through the kitchen. That's what I think of when I think of this book. Like that's like the
Yeah.
first thing I think of because honestly, this is probably one of the top 10 most cinematic books I've ever read.
It's very cinematic,
Like
very
he
visual.
really does a good job of like painting a picture for you to imagine when you're reading it.
Yeah. It's so good. I loved
So
it.
good. Me too. I think he has like he was trending a while ago because there was a book called 13
Hmm.
that he wrote and it's like part of a series, but like he's somebody that like I would love to go back into his backlist
I know, me too.
because
Especially since
he
I read that.
yeah,
Hmm.
no, I love him.
Yep. We both loved that one.
Mhm.
Well, my next one is also one of my favorite covers ever, and it's called An Inconvenient Woman by Stephanie Bewlins. There's an accent on the E in her name, so I don't know if it's like Stephanie, but
Funny.
there's something going on. Um, this one also has like a lot of things going on that come together at the end. Claire Fontaine is convinced that her ex-husband killed their teenage daughter all those years back and believes he's capable of killing again. When she sees him move in with another woman to play stepfather for a girl the same age as the one she lost, Claire tries desperately to warn the new bride of the danger her family is in. But when the woman dismisses her admonishments, she feels she must take matters into her own hands and stop the crime she failed to stop before. Sloan Wilson left the LAPD to work as a sin eater, a contractor for hire who specializes in cleaning up inconvenient situations, situations which, for whatever reason, are better handled outside the law. Like, for example, an ex wife who stalks her former husband, throws paint on his door, and makes vague, violent threats to his new wife. A domestic dispute like that can get messy when the cops are called. Plus, there's a risk that their presence will aggravate the woman in question. As Sloane investigates her newest mission, however, she finds that there is more to it than meets the eye, uncovering a history of trauma that casts aspersions on the stories of both Claire and Sloane's client. In a case where objective truth is increasingly muddled by passions, suspicions, and fears, she soon loses the ability to distinguish fact from fiction. But Sloane knows one thing for certain: sometimes the only way to prevent a crime is by committing one. The ending is amazing. Like, you're just like burning through the pages because it's like bouncing between perspectives, and you're like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? And then it like is just such a perfect ending. But the way that like Claire and Sloane's stories intermingle and then come together at the end is so good.
I really want to read this now, and I do
It
love that
is
cover.
so good. I This was another one, like, I read it as quickly as I could. Basically, just did my responsibilities for the day and read.
Like, no, that sounds incredible. That sounds
Yeah.
incredible. The cover looks familiar. I don't know if I like,
I know I sent it to you at one point because I was like, this cover.
I think I remember when it came out, and I don't know if I just didn't get a copy of it from the publisher or
I know
what had
she's a French
happened.
author, like it's technically translated, and then
Hmm.
it came out in 2020.
That could be why too. I know COVID
Yeah.
affected a lot of like review copies
Yep.
for publishers, so that could have been why.
Yeah.
But I
There are like
am
some things
going
I
to,
want to say, but I feel like it would kind of ruin the experience. But that's how many good things there are in this book.
I feel like I would love to get this on my Kindle,
Hmm.
but I'm with you. Like, I love the cover so much that I really just want to
Yeah.
have a physical copy of it.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Um,
And then like the
but
title means like three things by the end is another really cool part.
ooh, I love
Yeah.
that. I love when the title like is very representative of like what
Hmm.
happens in the story. It's not just like
Yep.
something to like grab you,
Yeah.
like another girl book.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Book Wild. And if you are, could I ask you a favor? Could you go and rate and review this podcast on whatever platform you're listening? Ratings and reviews make the biggest difference in discoverability of the podcast, and I definitely want to find all of our fellow thriller readers out there. So if you could go rate the podcast and leave a short review, that would make a huge difference. Thank you, and let's get back to the show.
I'm nervous for my next one.
Nervous.
I'm afraid it's on your list.
Oh, well, I have lots of backups, as we learned.
Okay. My next one is The Man on the Train by Debbie Babbitt.
I was so close. That one, it's like it's what I moved to my backup, so I'm glad.
So these two I had first because I was like, I
Mhm.
love these so much, but I knew that you loved them as well.
I
And
did.
I was like, fuck. Like these are the two that I really, really want to have because I loved
Yeah.
them so much, but I knew you liked them as well. So I was like,
Yeah.
I'm nervous. But um that's fine. So this is another one that you may think is just another retelling or like
Mm.
example of Strangers on a Train, but it is not, even though it sounds like it. Um, but it is one man is about to have a midlife crisis like no man has ever had before. But for his wife, the nightmare is just beginning. Manhattan Assistant District Attorney Lindra Haley is awakened one early morning by two police officers at the door. She has no idea that her husband has been living a secret life during his daily commute into the city. Now, Guy is the prime suspect in a brutal murder that could derail Linda's high-powered career and may be connected to a cold case. And Guy has disappeared. With a warrant out for his arrest, Linda travels to the scene of a 40-year-old unsolved murder and a night of violence that shattered the serenity of a fishing hamlet on the eastern end of Long Island. Aided and abetted by an ex-cop who's in love with her, she searches for evidence that could clear Guy's name. But as the manhunt intensifies and she begins to uncover the shocking truth and the past Guy has buried deep, Linda must decide if the stranger she married is innocent or guilty.
Yeah, it's like surprising how
And
many things she packed into that book.
incredible. Incredible. So
Yeah.
good.
Oh my gosh. I can't remember. So oh no, I can't say this. This is it's a complete spoiler. I almost just totally spoilered to tell you something.
Um, you have to read this one too. The
I
first victim.
know.
It's
I do.
so good. It's so good. And
I need to.
I know she has like a third thriller called like Saving
Saving
Grace.
Grace, I think,
And I
yeah.
think it's a thriller with like religious aspects to
It
it.
is. In the
So
South.
you might want to check that out.
I know.
Because she's like an auto buy for me now.
I know. She's so good.
She's so good.
She was fun to talk to, too.
Yeah.
She was cute.
She gives me like Karen Slaughter vibes.
I know. That's what I compared her to, too. And she was like, people keep saying it. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
She's so
And I'm
cute.
like, well, we all think it.
Yeah.
Well, my next one also takes place down south. And I was glued to it. I read this Mother's Day weekend, and like when we were at Tyler's parents' house for Mother's Day, I was sitting at the table trying to solve the book. So that was how into this one I was.
I love that.
And it is called This Family Lies by J.M. Cannon, who I've talked about before too. Iris Adler was supposed to be killed in their home in southern Louisiana. Iris and her husband Joseph are both shot point blank in the head by an unknown assailant. While her husband is killed, Iris survives, but only by a ricochet. She wakes up with her memory fractured. She doesn't remember her husband's family, eager as they are to take her into their world of marble, maids, and prim southern manners. I'm having a hiccup attack. Not long after Iris goes to heal the families to not long after not long after Iris goes to heal at the family's historic plantation, a girl is found dead in the sugarcane stalks nearby. And of these wealthy, strange people Iris is surrounded by, she realizes one of them might still be trying to kill her. The only thing certain is not everyone is getting out of this alive. This is another one where like there's so much more to the book even, but like you just
Mm.
can't, you like only want to know this much information. But some of the things that stood out to me was like she starts to be like, I don't like these people, so like who was I before, and like what was I capable of? And so she starts to like become scared of who she might have been, and that was like a next level of creepy.
So it sounds almost like a serious version of Samantha Who. Did you ever watch that show?
Mm-mm.
Samantha Who is like Christina Applegate and she's hit by like a taxi and
Okay.
she wakes up from being in a coma and like she's like, who are you? And it's like her boyfriend, like her best friend who's like
Oh.
kind of bitchy, her family and stuff. And they're like her best friend is like, oh, do you remember when you did this? And da da da. And she's like, oh my, like she realizes like I was a bad person.
Oh my
like
gosh.
like she was like before the car accident, she was like a complete and utter like bitch. But it's kind of like
Wow.
a comedy because like people see it and
Yeah.
her and they're like, Samantha. Oh, and she's like, no, it's not me. Like, I'm not that person anymore. But
That's
it's like a
funny.
really like it's a really fun
It's
like
a good
comedy.
premise. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Yes, this is a much, much darker version of
darker.
that.
Yeah.
And like she just has like all of her books, like one, they're all hot. And like I still end up loving it because I'm not like really experiencing it. But like
hmm
all of her books are so like seedy and kind of feel like dirty in a good way. Like because
Yeah.
also the stories are really gritty. And one of the deaths that happens at the end was one of the most unhinged things I've read in a while. It was wild. So it kind of turns like super gothic in its like creepiness and
Oh,
heaviness. Yeah. It's amazing.
I love that.
And the sequel comes out in like 2 months.
Wow.
Hmm.
Look at you.
I'm so excited.
Sequels. I love a good book sequel.
Yeah. And this one like needs it. It was like it definitely completed a story, but like you could do a whole other story.
I love that. I love when like
Yeah.
something's like satisfying, but like you could still
Hmm.
have more.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. She's one of my faves.
she is really good.
Hmm.
She is really good. What's the serial killer one?
The Flash Girls.
That was so good.
Yeah. With
Yeah.
like the marbles for eyes. It was wild.
Your face was like so serious. You're like the marbles for eyes.
Yeah, that
Um,
one's atmospheric. They just all are.
well, speaking of atmospheric,
Nice.
I am obsessed with The Hollywood Assistant by May Cobb.
So good.
Obsessed. I just read it this weekend. It just came out Tuesday. I am so glad that I read this before because like this, there's no way this cannot be included. It's actually my favorite May Cobb book now
Yeah.
and one of my top five of the year so far.
Hmm.
Um, but it is about Cassidy Foster, who is heartbroken, stuck in life, and getting a little too obsessed with plants. When a well-connected friend becomes sick of Cassidy's moping and gets her a gig with famous Hollywood couple Marisol and Nate Sterling, Cassidy jumps at the chance to move to sunny LA. The Sterlings are warm and welcoming, the perfect couple. All she has to do is be available for a few hours a week for errands. In return, she has access to luxury, designer clothes, a sparkling pool, great pay. But when Nate takes interest in her, asking her to read scripts he's written, she thinks it could be the key to kickstarting her writing dreams. As their business relationship grows, so does their attraction. Nate is sexy, talented, and Cassidy can't believe her luck. Clearly, Marisol doesn't know what she has. Maybe that's why the two are always fighting when they think Cassidy isn't around. But Cassidy learns she was hired for a different purpose. The Sterlings are not the perfect couple. Marisol is not the perfect wife. And when one of them is found dead, Cassidy becomes the perfect suspect.
It is so
Bum,
twisty.
bum, bum. I I love May Cobb
Yeah,
with all of
always.
my heart, but I, in the middle of that book, was like, fuck, I have this figured out.
Oh yeah.
I was like, I know what's gonna happen, but now I'm kind of excited to see how she gets me to the
Yeah.
end. And then I realized that I was way in
Wrong.
left field, and Maycob was like, you do not have this figured out. Like, nice try.
Yes.
I legit have never felt so tricked by a book in a long time because
Nice.
I wasn't even really disappointed that I had figured it out. I was just like, okay, Garrett,
Right.
like, like you
Yeah.
are
Oh
onto
yeah. I know what you
something.
mean. Hmm.
And then, like, in the end of the book, I was like, son of a bitch. I actually did not have this figured out whatsoever.
Right.
Um, but it was just so, so, so good.
Hmm.
I want Cassidy's job because I love shopping and I actually love running errands.
Yes.
Like I run my errands on Saturdays and like that
Hmm.
is like something that I look forward to. I love running errands.
Yeah,
So for that to be my job, I would be
I
like it
know.
would be my dream.
Like
Um
organizing her closet.
yeah, organizing someone's closet like the I actually helped a friend who just moved into an apartment a couple months ago
Hmm.
with his closet and I was like color coordinating his shirts. But
Oh
I also
yeah.
was like, you have to have the top button buttoned so that your collar does not get like all messed up. And like
Hmm.
I would check, like going to his apartment later on, I would check and be like, are all of your top? And he's like, why do you do that? I never button. I'm like, because I told you that's how we're gonna do it. Like if you want my
Yes.
help, that's how we're doing it. So
Yes.
yeah, like things like that would be my dream job, but also
Hmm.
like I actually ran my errands super quick when I was reading this
Mm.
so I could get back to finishing it.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah. It's perfect for the summer too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So perfect.
very atmospheric and it's very
Hmm.
cinematic and it's just
Yeah.
a stunner.
Yeah. Well, I have an atmospheric and cinematic stunner as well that you also introduced to me, The Hunter's Daughter by Nicola Solvenick. I actually was like, I kind of was torn between this and The Man on the Train because I read them around the same time. So I just happened to choose this one instead, but it all worked out.
I am going to say this was going to be on my top five,
Oh, nice.
but like I knew how much you loved it that I
I
was like,
did.
I'm not going to steal this from her because I knew you
Yes.
were going to talk about it.
Oh my gosh. See, we were in sync and we still got to mention both of them.
Yeah.
Um, but this one is about Anna Corey, who escaped her father's darkness long ago. When she was a girl, her childhood memories were sealed away from her conscious mind by a controversial hypnosis treatment. She's now a decorated sheriff's lieutenant serving a rural county. I almost said country, conducting an ordinary life far from her father's shadow. When Anna kills a man in the line of duty, her suppressed memories return. She dreams of her beloved father, his hands red with blood, surrounded by flower decked corpses he had sacrificed to the god of the forest. To Anna's horror, a serial killer emerges who is copying her father, and who knows who she really is. Is her father still alive, or is this the work of another? Will the killer expose her, destroying everything she has built for herself? Does she want him to? But as she haunts the forest, using her father's tricks to hunt the killer, will she find what she needs most or lose herself in the gathering darkness? So atmospheric. That was even part of how you sold it to me, was like how, because you said it was like Karen Slaughter met Where the Crawdads Sing. It was
Yes.
very accurate. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's so much, like the main character really does love being in the forest and has all these
Yeah.
really visceral memories um in it, but it's also like this one similar to This Family Lies. It's another one where like she's kind of scared of her own mind because she's her father's daughter. And that is just like next level creepy to me.
There were so many descriptions of things that were uncomfortable or
Hmm.
painful for the character that
Yes.
I
Hmm.
was so uncomfortable the entire book. And it's not
Yeah.
like necessarily like gory.
Hmm.
It's just like the uncomfortable inconvenience of some things like having stitches and like
Yes.
pulling a stitch or something and just being like,
It's
oh,
like it
like
doesn't forget about the fact that she was injured the way we like just forget in thrillers.
yes, yes,
Hmm.
yeah. And it's kind of like that, just like you kind of
You're
like
like,
cringe
oh,
a little bit. Like you're like, oh God,
yes.
but then like something crazy happens and you're like, okay, like let's keep going. Like
Yeah.
you're so tough. But
Yes.
yeah, it was so
The
good. It
ending
was so
is
good.
so cinematic and amazing.
So is the beginning. The beginning
Yes.
sticks in my heart. Like I can picture that beginning in my mind,
Me
like
too.
play by play, and
Me
just
too.
yeah,
Me
yeah,
too.
it's
I'm
so
with you.
good. It's so good.
Loved it.
Me too. So, speaking of serial killers,
Nice.
and if you don't want to hunt down one, you can always possibly fall in love with one.
Oh yeah.
Because I need to talk about Love Letters to a Serial Killer by Tasha Coriel. One of the things I loved with Bright Young Women and what it represented was that it is a book about the Ted Bundy murders without being about Ted Bundy. It's more focused on the
Mm-hmm.
victims. And there's a part of the book that Jessica Knoll talks about, like going through these court transcripts where he wasn't that bright. Like he was
Yeah.
not doing a good job defending himself. He was picking his nose in court, and somehow things got lost in translation throughout the years. And like women are like, oh my God, like Ted Bundy was so hot. Like I would totally get in that car. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's disappointing or creepy and unsettling when a serial killer or somebody who is capable of a heinous crime gets caught and it's not the
Mm-hmm.
creepy janitor or truck driver and it's an actual good looking man who's capable of doing horrible things. Like I get that.
Right.
But this book plays so much on those whole like women being attracted to men and like if they were capable of things like that or if they were a serial killer, like would that stop some people? It's
Yeah.
just so good. Um,
Nice.
it's about Hannah, who is an aimless young woman. She starts writing an accused serial killer while he awaits trial, and then once he's acquitted, decides to move in with him and take the investigation into her own hands. So basically she is like sick of the dating life. Like all of her friends are getting married and she's still single. She's in her 30s. And she ends up like finding a bunch of friends in a true crime forum that is on a mission to solve a bunch of murders of four women in Atlanta. Um, and then this really handsome lawyer named William is arrested for it. And she thinks that, like, in order to get out her pent up frustration and rage, she's just going to write him a letter and be like, you fucking suck.
Yeah.
And basically, he writes back. And then she kind of becomes obsessed with the case, and like her entire life just kind of blows up around her. And she loses her job, and she ends up going to Georgia to attend the trial. And goes with other true crime junkies that she's befriended through this forum. But then a fifth woman is discovered murdered, and basically the jury has no choice but to find him not guilty. And the two of them find themselves in domestic bliss, even though she's still not 100% sure if he's guilty or not.
Trippy.
So crazy.
Yeah. That's a
That
unique
book,
premise.
yeah, yeah, it's a really unique premise. And her way of telling that story around Hannah
Mm.
makes me think that like Emerald Fennell could turn this into a movie because
Ooh.
I got the same feeling reading this that I got when I watched Promising Young Woman for the first time.
Ooh, wow.
Like I
That's
just like was
amazing.
like, this is just so unique and it's not necessarily what I thought it was going to be,
Mm-hmm.
but in such a positive way.
That's
That
awesome.
yeah, I
I love getting
loved it.
surprised by a book.
Oh yeah, I loved it. And the cover is like fucking awesome.
It's so cool.
It's so cool.
Yeah. Oh, a dog started barking, so it might get
Uh,
loud here. We'll see. Well, I have another one with a really cool cover that is subversive. I loved Bodies to Die For by Lori Brand. Like, I will be thinking about this book for a long time. Um, so why can't I find so popular fitness influencer Gemma has transformed herself from a before into an after, complete with washboard abs, thriving business, and a gorgeous husband. But social media can be deceiving. Online, the cutthroat world of bikini bodybuilding may just eat her alive. That's if she's not first devoured by the secret nemesis that lurks beneath her polished surface, waiting to destroy her. Software engineer Ashley is fat and frustrated with failed diets, with a world that wants her to shrink, with biased doctors, online trolls, and even her own mother. until Ashley falls in with a mysterious and radical sect of fat activists who are fighting back by any means necessary. She's never felt so alive, so full of purpose. She'll do whatever it takes to ride this high, destroy diet culture, and win the approval of her charismatic leader. But when Gemma's toughest rival turns up dead and more fitness girls fall like dominoes, it's beginning to look like the body image war has gone too far. It was so fun, so freaking good. And the way
I
it
love how
talks
much you love
about
that one.
both sides of like fitness influencers and navigating the world when you're overweight, so fascinating how she like talked about both sides of it, and how their stories came together in the end was wild, the way their character arcs came together. And it's just like a really fun thriller in general.
It's very unique. It's very unique,
Yes.
which is what I respect about that story too, is it's
Yeah.
like nobody else kind of has a thriller out there that centers around that,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
world of
Like
fitness.
it's like a crazy wild climax at a bikini bodybuilding competition.
Like no one else
It's so
has that kind of
unique.
imagination.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I talk about it a lot. So if anyone wants to hear more about it, there's a whole episode for it.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Um, if you want something bleak and depressing,
I know. I ended on kind of my like campiest note, and you're like bleak and depressing.
this one is not a thriller, which is why I saved it
Mm,
for last, but it is probably my favorite book of 2024, and I don't know how that would ever change.
yeah.
Like, no shade to my TBR or anybody who's written anything, but this is like one of those books that I like thought I might, I'm gonna give this a shot. I don't know how it's gonna work out, and it was just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the book is called How We Named the Stars by
Mm-hmm.
Andres and Orderica.
Mm-hmm.
Orderica.
Yeah.
Um, Andres, I love you and your book. So I'm sorry if I butchered your last name. Um, when Daniel de la Luna arrives as a scholarship student at an elite East Coast university, he bears the weight of his family's hopes and dreams and the burden of sharing his late uncle's name. Daniel flounders at first, but then Sam, his roommate, changes everything. As the relationship evolves from brotherly banter to something more intimate, Daniel soon finds himself in love with a man who helps him see himself in a new light. As the relationship takes flight, Daniel's pulled away, first by Sam's hesitation and then by a brutal turn of events that changes his life forever. As he grapples with profound loss, Daniel finds himself at his family's ancestral home in Mexico for the summer, finding joy in the setting even as he struggles to come to terms with what's happened and faces a host of new. How does the person he is connected with, this place his family comes from, how is his own story connected to his late uncle's, and how might he reconcile the many parts of himself as he learns to move forward?
It sounds harrowing.
I think it's one of the only books I've read that's in second person.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And just like, even like starting it, I was like, ooh, this is going to be a very different reading, like for me,
It
because
is.
I'm not used to second person very much.
Oh,
And I think within like the third page, I was like, I'm not even paying attention to this being in second person. Like, I was just like completely lost in it. And the
wow.
ending made me, like, the last chapter made me
Hmm.
sob.
Yeah.
And it's like when people are like, what do you think of the ending of this book? Like, I will be like, this is one of the most visceral, emotional,
Hmm.
harrowing, poignant, awful, sad moments
Yeah.
I've ever read in a book that will stick
Oh
with me
my
forever.
God. Wow.
I love it. I
And it's
love it.
just like a testament to the writing anytime you're that moved by a fictional character.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah. And
amazing.
it's not a thriller by any means. It's
Yeah.
definitely like kind of like a Call Me by Your Name type of story.
Hmm.
Um, But the funny thing is there were actually a lot of moments where there were twists and turns in it
Oh, kind of like
without being a
reveals or
thriller.
something.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mhm.
I was like, whoa, like I was not expecting that. I'm just thinking I'm going along with the story, kind of
Yeah,
not prepared for that, but it was just so good. It was so
man.
good.
I sh
Steph was
I
actually making
believe you.
fun of me this week for like how much I love like bleak books. And I was like, if you want your heart completely ripped out, like my one of my favorite books in the entire world is How We Name the Stars.
Yeah.
And like when you came up with this idea for this episode, I
Mhm.
was like,
That was the one you were sure of.
this is the first book I'm picking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at least you did have 5. You were a little worried at first.
It's a little ooh. I was a little I actually had six. I actually had
Oh,
six because I thought
yeah.
I went through my list of like
Yeah.
everything I've read this year, and I did find six. Because I thought for sure we were gonna have Steve Kavanaugh and Debbie Babbitt in common.
Yeah.
So I did have six, but I got it down to five.
Yeah. Me too. I had 9. And so part of how I made the decision was some of them haven't come out yet. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just talk about those in the next half of the year. But I've read some great ones recently.
Yeah, yeah. My sixth one was Rabbit Hole by Kate Brody, but
Oh,
feel
nice.
like I feel like I gushed about that book so much before
Hmm.
I stopped recording the podcast with you
Yeah.
that I was like, people know that I love this book and like it's already been recommended so many times.
Yeah.
But special shout out to Kate Brody. Rabbit Hole's amazing.
Yes. That was some of how, because I had Since She's Been Gone by Sagi Schwartz, but I've talked about it a lot recently.
Mhm.
Um, and Missing White Woman, I really enjoyed that one a lot. And
That was a really
then
good one.
it was so good. I was so engaged the entire time. Um, but then my other 2 are ones that are gonna be episodes that are coming out in the next 2 weeks. So I really loved Things Don't Break on Their Own by Sarah Easter Collins. I'm having an allergy attack as I speak, so sorry to the YouTubers watching it. And then No Road Home by John Fram. Loved those so much, but they're not out yet, so that's just a little teaser.
It's like you had your allergy attack the minute you mentioned that book and you were like wiping away tears
I
because you're like,
know.
it's so
It's like
sad.
all of a sudden my eyes are just killing me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
An Inconvenient Woman and what is the
This
name of it
Family
again?
Lies. Maybe.
No. An Inconvenient Woman and the one that you just mentioned that you said was Bleak.
Oh, Things Don't Break on Their Own. Yeah, you
Things Don't
need to
Break
read
on Their
that
Own.
one.
Things Don't Break on Their Own. I always want to call How We Name the Stars. I don't know
Oh,
why.
that's funny. There
Or
was a
there's one
while that I
called,
wasn't always sure of it, how much of the title I needed to say.
yeah, there's also one called The Bright and Tender Dark that is
Yeah.
like another literary like story that's very similar.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh my God, like I always forget the title of that book, but like those are the
Yeah.
two that like I need to get to ASAP.
Yeah. You do. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I can still talk about both of those. So then we can discuss. And Steph is the one who introduced me to An Inconvenient Woman, so shout out to her. Yeah,
I
it is
love
so
that. I love
good.
Steph.
I know, me too. We're just
She is
fangirls
amazing.
over here of everyone.
Yeah.
We didn't make it
Hmm.
through a podcast without saying Ashley Winstead until I just said it, but
I don't think
no,
we
I
did.
said The Last Housewife.
You said The Last Housewife.
Never mind.
I'm
I
trying to
hope
think.
she
I
can
don't think
feel the vibes of us
I hope she
talking
can feel the
about her.
love.
Well,
Yeah, I hope
she's
she can feel the
traveling
love.
Europe right now.
I did not. I did. I will never make it through an episode of the podcast without mentioning Jessica Knoll,
Yep, that's true.
and I didn't. I think I mentioned her
Well, at
like
least we're consistent.
I mentioned her multiple times. I need to hire an intern
Hmm.
that can go through all of the episodes that we've ever recorded and
Yeah,
just do like a 30-minute reel of every time that I mention Jessica Knoll.
yeah. AI could kind of do it. I've been needing to like upload everything into that because then it can categorize stuff by transcript. Yeah.
I have a book recommendation for you.
Ooh, go on.
It is a book that was pitched to me
Mm,
that is, it says it's Frankenstein for the age of AI.
whoa.
It is called William by Mason Coyle, Coile, Quayle.
Oh yeah, I
It
see
says
it.
it blends psychological horror with cyber noir.
Whoa, that's unique.
Yeah,
And that cover is creepy.
yeah. So I was like, oh my God, if I
Whoa.
can introduce Kate to a book that like should be
I'm
on your
definitely
radar,
intrigued.
yeah, it sounds really good. It sounds really good, and it's just perfect for you. So,
Yeah. Fascinating.
yeah.
Ooh, that would be perfect to read in October. It says it comes out in October.
Oh
That
yeah.
gives fall vibes.
Hmm.
Fall.
I do love a story, like a Frankenstein-esque story.
I don't think I've really read one ever.
I love Frankenstein, oddly enough.
I
Um,
think I'm neutral.
it will always be one that I'm like, no matter how many different movies there are of it, like I will
Hmm.
always check it out.
Yeah.
I'm a big Frankenstein. Just like creating a monster and then having it go haywire on you is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a pretty terrifying concept.